Between Dynasty, Best Ball, and Redraft, I will have well over 100 fantasy football teams this year. And while they will all be different in some way or another, one thing they will all have in common is these 5 players will not be on any of them. Starting with Davante Adams, I know he's still viewed as a stud wide receiver, even though he just had by far his worst season of the last 4 years. Only 1,100 yards last year despite not missing a game. But he showed signs last year that maybe he's not elite anymore. I think he's still a good player. I think he's still a good wide receiver. I'm just worried if he's still an elite wide receiver. He's going to turn 32 in December. And who is he going to be catching passes from? Is it going to be Aiden O'Connell? Are they going to try to go out and get one of these vet QBs? Are they going to draft one of the kind of like afterthought rookie QBs this year? This is not a situation that makes me excited for Davante Adams. And when you look at him last year, especially in the second half and down the stretch, he wasn't very good in fantasy anyways. So if I somehow have Davante Adams on one of my dynasty teams, I am absolutely looking to trade him if I can. And when I see him going in the second or third round of fantasy drafts, there is no way I can pull the trigger on a guy like Davante Adams that high. So Davante Adams, I will not be seeing you on any of my fantasy teams. I also will not be seeing Nick Chubb on any of my fantasy teams. I know I get this like label of a Nick Chubb hater. I don't know where it came from. I just always said like, hey, you guys are drafting this running back too high. In real life, Nick Chubb is great. In fantasy, he's just kind of good. But now he's coming off the worst kind of knee injury you can possibly have, multiple ligament tear, ACL tear, and he didn't even have ACL surgery until the middle of November because he had to have a first surgery before that. You're looking at a running back that is almost certainly not going to be ready for week 1. Who knows when he's going to be back, almost certainly going to start on the PUP. And then when he's back, you got to have him ease into action like we see with all running backs coming back from ACL injuries. Not to mention, people get excited about these young guys that tear ACLs and say, well, they're young, they can heal. Nick Chubb's not young anymore. He's an older running back with a lot of wear and tear, and he doesn't give you the benefit of pass catching like you got with Breece Hall last year. So you don't even have that to bank on saying, well, maybe he can catch 70 plus passes like Breece Hall did and save his value. Unlikely Nick Chubb is coming close to 70 plus passes. So again, if I somehow had Nick Chubb in Dynasty, I'd be looking to trade him. And even when I see him in the 8th round of best ball drafts and redraft leagues, I'm not going to be able to pull the trigger. I just think it's going to be a completely lost season for Nick Chubb this year. And a similar player to Nick Chubb is Mike Williams, wide receiver for the Chargers. This is a guy I've said for the last couple of years, man, I want to draft this guy. I think he's a good value. I want him on my fantasy teams. He has tremendous upside. He's a good player, and he has been when he's actually on the field, which these days is hardly ever. And now he too is coming off an ACL injury. He's 29 years old, and there's a good chance the Chargers are going to cut him loose. Is there really a team out there excited to sign a 29-year-old wide receiver coming off an ACL injury, especially a guy like Mike Williams, who, yes, he's been good, but he's never been elite? Who knows where he's going to play this year or beyond? This is not the kind of risk I want on my fantasy team because I don't feel the upside is there anymore for Mike Williams. So as much as I was pounding the drum for this guy the last couple of years, I'm done. I am no longer drafting Mike Williams. If I have him in Dynasty, I'm looking to trade him. I don't care how far he falls in best ball, in redraft. Not going to touch Mike Williams this year. I just think there are better options with healthy ACLs, with more upside that you can get instead. And Pat Freiermuth is another guy every year I think, okay, this is it. This is the year he should break out, and he doesn't. Now, last year, a lot of it had to do with health, but also look at the Steelers offense. Look at the Steelers situation. Kenny Pickett is not the answer. He is not it. He's not a good quarterback in real life. He's not a good quarterback for fantasy. Mason Rudolph, the one guy who actually made the offense kind of relevant, I guess, is gone. They cut ties with him. There's talk that it might be Russell Wilson. Is that really good for Pat Freiermuth? Oh, and then let's not forget new offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. Yeah, we've seen how this has gone with Kyle Pitts. This is not the guy you want coaching up your tight ends. I love Pat Freiermuth. He's still young. I keep wanting to buy this guy in Dynasty. He's somebody I've said for the last couple of years, buy him in Dynasty. He's a great value. But man, with his situation right now, I think I'm running away, running for the hills here. And the same goes in redraft and best ball. I just don't see the value for Pat Freiermuth. I think you can get similar tight ends much later in your drafts, and you can get similar tight ends much cheaper in Dynasty. So as much as I like the player, as much as I want him to succeed and break out, man, Arthur Smith, really? And then finally, J.K. Dobbins. Last year, I said, this is the year you have to draft J.K. Dobbins. He's 2 years coming off ACL. He's going to be fully healthy. Went out there right away, was looking great, and then tore his Achilles. Man, this guy just cannot catch a break. This guy can just not stay healthy. I don't care how talented he is. I don't care where he was drafted. I don't care how few touches he has. I don't care about where he plays this year. I don't care about any of that. He tore his Achilles. Name me one running back who has torn their Achilles and been great afterwards. You can't. Remember when James Robinson had like 3 or 4 good games and everybody thought he did it? Yeah, well, where's James Robinson now? Or what about Cam Akers, who came back really fast from Achilles and everybody was like, he did it. Where's Cam Akers now? Oh, he's going to back up Ty Chandler in Minnesota, maybe if he even plays. No way. Stay away from Achilles running backs. I mean, it's one thing to draft a running back or go trade for a running back in Dynasty who's torn their ACL, but Achilles, that is the absolute kiss of death for a running back. The next time we see a running back come back from Achilles will be the first time, and I'm not betting it's going to be J.K. Dobbins. Dynasty, best ball, redraft, does not matter. He will not be on any of my fantasy teams. Now, those guys will not be on any of my fantasy teams, but how about some other big name players who have seen their ADP drop in 2024? Will I be drafting those guys or not? Well, you can find out right here.